Welcome back to the Kino Cave, and happy Halloween, everybody. Halloween is finally here. I am so excited to get dressed up and go out and do whatever because Halloween is just one of the best times of year, and I've been so looking forward to this. So today, I wanted to bring another special kind of brief history Halloween video a la the one I did about Jack Pierce last year. This is a brief history of the Bride of Frankenstein. Today I'm going to be covering the history of the Bride of Frankenstein in the original novel, of course her namesake film, and also the subsequent films that feature her. Not as many as you'd think for such an iconic horror movie monster, but she has been in countless pieces of media throughout history. I'm not going to be getting into everything, like, I'm not going to get into every appearance she's had in an animated movie or in a Scooby Doo episode or stuff that references her or anything like that, because we'd be here all day if that was the case. I'm just going to go over the bride as she is featured in the Frankenstein films that she appears in, which is not as many as you'd think. So, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein is one of my favorite books ever. I absolutely love it. I could sink my teeth into it and just think and talk about it for days on end. It's absolutely fantastic. Mary Shelley was a genius, in my opinion, and I bet a lot of people don't even realize that The Bride of Frankenstein is technically in that book in some form. Also, The Bride of Frankenstein from 1935 is one of my favorite films of all time. I think it is absolutely fantastic. Not perfect, obviously, it's from 1935, but with the 90th anniversary of that movie coming up and also the upcoming release of The Bride, directed by Maggie Gyllenhaal, which I'm very excited to see, I thought this is the perfect time to go through The Bride of Frankenstein as a character. So without further ado, let's get into The Bride of Frankenstein in the novel Frankenstein, or the Modern Prometheus. In Mary Shelley's book, the monster, or the creature, whatever you want to call it, I know that most people just call the monster Frankenstein. I don't really care about that. I know some people do. It's weird. I don't care. I just call the monster, and the bride, and Dr. Frankenstein, Dr. Frankenstein. The creature confronts Dr. Frankenstein and demands a female companion so that he does not have to be alone anymore, because everybody treats him like he is a monster, and so he becomes a monster. The creature demands this, and if the doctor doesn't do it, then the creature will kill Dr. Frankenstein's wife on his wedding night. So the doctor gets to work, but then about halfway through, he sees the monster staring at him through a window and imagines how horrific it'd be to have not one or two, but even a whole race of these horrific creatures. He destroys the unfinished bride, and bada bing, bada boom, the creature goes on a rampage. Now, the symbolism and the reasoning behind the Bride of Frankenstein is largely up for interpretation. You can interpret the creation of the bride or the female companion or whatever in so many different ways in the book Frankenstein. Obviously, a more surface level interpretation is the idea of loneliness, and that the creature is lonely because he's been treated differently all his life. He wants a female companion that will never leave him and will never die. This could be easily attributed to Mary Shelley's own life. She was surrounded by death. Her mother died giving birth to her. She had husbands who died, children who died in childbirth or miscarried and all that kind of thing. She was obsessed with death, and so there's obviously an interpretation there of her wanting a sort of zombie companion that would never leave. And there's tons of different interpretations. Some of my favorites I'll get into right now, but there's hundreds. And if you have an interpretation of the female companion in the book Frankenstein, I'd love to hear about it down below in the comments. So comment that, and I would love to know what everybody thinks. Genuinely, just be nice. Interpretations I like are the idea is that man's desire to create and control women is of course in here. Dr. Frankenstein is creating her for a specific purpose, to love and be with the creature forever, without considering the fact that she might have her own agency and her own choices. There's a lot of ideas of fear of motherhood, which Mary Shelley would have definitely struggled with, because She unfortunately had a lot of her children die in various circumstances. She only had one child that actually lived to adulthood, I believe. So there's a lot of fear of motherhood aspects to it. Frankenstein destroys or aborts the creation before it is finished. There's also themes here, I believe, of a fear of heteronormativity because the creature threatens to kill Frankenstein's wife on their wedding night, and the specific line is, "I will be with you on your wedding night." And so, to preserve his own heterosexual relationship, he needs to create another heterosexual relationship between the creature and his bride, but he destroys the bride out of fear, and so therefore the creature destroys the doctor's bride. So I think that there is an interpretation there of a fear of heteronormativity, and there is a very unique queer reading of the Frankenstein novel, which is very interesting. But I can't get into all of it here because we're just talking about the bride, and I want to get to cinema because that is where my expertise lie. But I think that that could also be connected to Mary Shelley. She's widely known as the first goth because she did such crazy stuff. It is often theorized that she had an open relationship with her husband and that they would experiment and things like that. So I think some of those themes could be within the book Frankenstein as well. Now, thankfully, I'm moving on from the book because I have schooling in English and I can understand and interpret books and stuff, but it is not in my wheelhouse whatsoever. It is not within my expertise. So, tell you what, if you're a literature student, just comment below and tell me how I'm wrong about Frankenstein and my interpretations of it. But let's get on to the film, The Bride of Frankenstein, 1935. So James Whale did not want to make a sequel film to Frankenstein. He didn't want to be pigeonholed into a horror director. He had directed, obviously, Frankenstein, and I think he directed The Old Dark House before that as well. I'm not sure when he did The Invisible Man, was it before or after? But he's kind of known for doing these classic horror movies, even though he didn't really want that. I love James Whale. He's one of my favorite filmmakers ever. I think he's absolutely fantastic, and I think if he directed Son of Frankenstein, that would have been one of the greatest horror trilogies of all time. Just putting that out there. I'll get into that in a different video for a different time. He eventually relented and said that he would make a sequel to Frankenstein under one condition. He had full creative control, which was a mind-bogglingly good decision because this is an excellent film and a film that only James Whale could make. Now, this is not a review of Bride of Frankenstein. I will talk about it at some point as a film, but I want to specifically talk about the behind-the-scenes stuff in this, specifically to do with the makeup and the conceptualization of the bride. So they cast Elsa Lanchester in this film as both the bride at the very end, but also as Mary Shelley in a prologue describing her book. Now, I love Elsa Lanchester in this film. I think she's absolutely fantastic, and she portrays both roles incredibly well, and she clearly understood what the filmmakers were going for, which they wanted to establish a connection between Mary Shelley and the bride to show how Mary Shelley, on the surface level, is this, well-to-do English woman who's very prim and proper and talks very eloquently, but hidden within her is this creature, this monster, or this devil that could come up with these horrific ideas in Frankenstein. None of that I see as a bad thing, by the way. I think that we all have a little monster inside of us that's just trying to create the worst thing we could possibly create. I might not leave that in. Fuck it, I'll leave it in. But I love that idea. I love that idea of Mary Shelley being presented in one way, and then, say, her kind of true form being presented in a different way, where she has a giant beehive hairdo and stitches all across her neck. The conceptualization of the bride, there is dispute with this. The editor of the film, Ted J. Kent, insisted that it was James Whale who came up with the idea, but other sources, including Elsa Lanchester, believe that it was our good old friend Jack Pierce who created the Bride of Frankenstein and conceptualized it, which would be very on point for Jack Pierce. Watch that video if you haven't. It's one of my favorite videos that I've ever made, so watch my Jack Pierce video for more information on him. Lanchester was very apprehensive of Pierce because she described him as a god creating human beings in his laboratory. He would actually dress like a surgeon when he did the makeup for his monsters. And if you know anything about Jack Pierce, then you would know how much sense it makes that she described him as a god creating human beings, which I also talked about in my video from last year. The makeup took about 3 hours to apply. I believe Boris Karloff's monster makeup took 4, and there were some issues with it. For one, the bandages were so tight that Elsa just had to be carried around set. She couldn't move, and she also couldn't eat, so she had to be fed through a straw by other crew members because she just couldn't move at all, which is very funny in retrospect. Most people know this, but the hairdo was like the very famous hairdo with the white streaks was done using a wire cage, which I think is used for horsehair. I don't know anything about horses, so I don't get that, but that's what was done apparently, and it works. Big fucking whack hairdo. I think it's fantastic. Lanchester apparently wore stilts to make her taller. She said that it made her 7 feet tall, which I think is perfect for the Bride of Frankenstein. You know, the monster is supposed to be really tall as well, so I totally get that idea, although there is no possible way that she was 7 feet tall, because you can see in the film that she is about as tall as Colin Clive, who played the Doctor, and the actor who played Dr. Pretorius, whose name escapes me, and they were each roughly 6 feet tall, so I believe that she did wear stilts because Lanchester was reportedly 5'4", so she would have been very short compared to Dr. Frankenstein, so she probably wore stilts to make her about 6 feet tall, not 7 feet tall. And my final note on the Bride of Frankenstein is that the hissing sound that she makes, and she makes that just horrifying face that I see in my nightmares at night. Genuinely, like I think that Elsa Lanchester is fucking terrifying as the bride. Maybe I'm a pussy for thinking that. I don't care. It's horrifying. But that hissing sound is based off of a swan at I think Regency Park in London, and that's the sound that a swan makes when it is being threatened, or when its young is being threatened. So that's what Lanchester based it off of, and that's probably why it's so damn scary. With all that being said, that is the end of my notes for The Bride of Frankenstein. Yeah, I mean, I love this. This is one of my favorite films, so of course I love the look of The Bride of Frankenstein. I think it's brilliant. The white dress, obviously screaming bride, but it also feels like there's bandages. The hairdo is obviously incredible. The stitches are incredible. Apparently Jack Pierce was very particular about the stitches and getting the continuity of them right and stuff. And the makeup, the way the makeup looks, it's just perfect. I love it, and I do understand and somewhat agree with the criticism that the bride is barely in the movie. Like, it would have been cool to see her. It would have been cool to see her in like more of the movie, or in a subsequent film, which unfortunately never happened. But she's in this movie more than she's in the book, so you know, take what you can get, I guess. Now let's move on to the film from 1985, The Bride. So this film is supposedly a remake of James Whale's movie, which is insulting, because it not only does it just not have the same plot as that film, but it's fucking terrible. I'm probably never going to review this movie, so right now here's your review. It fucking sucks. The bride doesn't have any monster makeup on her. She is severely underdeveloped. Frankenstein's monster spends the whole movie hanging out with a little person who wants to join the circus, and they get into weird hijinks that are funny to a point, and then they jump over that point, and it's not funny anymore. And it just kind of ends abruptly, and Sting is in it. Look, the only thing about this film that I enjoyed is the fact that Clancy Brown's the monster. The biggest cardinal sin of this movie is that there is no monster makeup on the bride whatsoever. She's just a very beautiful woman who has been brought back to life, I guess, and she does full frontal nudity at one point in front of Sting, which is great, I guess. God. It's just, like, she's not a monster then. I never, like, you forget about halfway through this movie that she's supposed to be a reanimated corpse. She just looks like a regular woman with the mind of a child, I guess. Which leads me into my next point, where I know Poor Things came out after this, but by God, is this just a worse version of Poor Things? So do yourselves a favor, don't watch this movie, watch Poor Things, because that movie is excellent and it does a way better job at this idea. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein is directed by Kenneth Branagh, and I did review this movie very recently, so if you want to know my full thoughts on that movie, go back to that video. So, it mostly follows the book, but towards the end, it changes a few things. Dr. Frankenstein revives his own wife, Elizabeth, and reanimates her so he can be with her again. The Doctor and the monster fight over Elizabeth, and in the sort of confusion and horror of the situation, Elizabeth sets herself on fire and runs out a window and kills herself to get out of the situation. While this isn't as thematically rich as the novel or the 1935 film, I do appreciate that at the very least they took Helena Bonham Carter, a famously beautiful woman, and made her looking like a monster with like singed off hair and stitches all over her face and neck and arms, and at least they did that much, and it's genuinely compelling to look at. Doing some research on the fly for you guys, because I realized I forgot to credit the makeup artist, and they deserve credit because they did very good makeup. This will all be cut out, or some of it might be left in, depends on how funny it is. So the makeup artist was Christine Alsop. Prosthetics by Marc Coulier. What else has this prosthetics guy done? Oh, he did Poor Things. Huh. What has Christine Alsop done? I think she's just regular makeup. Yeah, she did Skyfall, Full Metal Jacket, 1917, and Fast and Furious Hobbs and Shaw, so there's a career for you. With all that being said, guys, thank you for getting through this video with me. In case you didn't realize, I was a little bit sick throughout this video, so I may have lost my mind a little bit. Also, it's been a while since I've recorded properly, so that's also something I'm dealing with right now, trying to get back into the groove of this. But thank you for sticking with me, guys, and happy Halloween to you all. I'm so happy it's Halloween, and we got to talk about some horror shit over the month of October. So, happy Halloween, guys. Stay safe out there. Have a spooky ass day.